Greetings to all the students of BBA University. We'll continue our session from last week, and this is the second part of our studies to why firms become MNE. I think it's the slide 13, continuation from slide 12. It's simple that they aim to have a profit-seeking motive. They want to generate as much profit as possible. Secondly, they want to create a brand identity and global presence, because the more you look at these big companies like Nike, Gucci, Versace, D&G, they all focus on countries where the lifestyle is good, people would like to wear luxury clothes, and people believe in the brand identity. So the more you have multinational enterprise in those companies, your supply chain network and the reach of global outreach becomes more exposed to profit. That's the whole point of firms becoming MNE. It's a common factor that international places with best location gives you more advantages. So if in organizational structure you have companies which are located regionally, multinationally, it's bound to create more profits, and it's strategically good for the company. Hence they like to become M&E. Most important of all, if you look at some companies you make a product, chances are it may not do good in that country, but if they diversify into other country, their sales tend to pick up. Usually, in most cases, big companies could be a fine example of burgers from McDonald's. It doesn't do well in one country, but it does well in another country. Fine example is Avon. When it first launched into its own market, it was very poor, but once it went multinational, their own country products started selling well also. So that was a fine example of why firms become M&E. Here's a bit of a tricky one, that the types of multinational enterprises. If you look at this example, you have got decentralized corporation with strong presence in home country. That means that every country is given power in that specific country, like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, to make decentralization decision and also have a brand which deals in decentralized way. So those countries make up their own decision in that country for quick, faster approach towards customer needs. Then you have got a centralized corporation. It requires cost advantage, where cheap resources are available, and decision making is usually kept at top level. This is a fine example, could be Steve Jobs, Apple I was referring to. The company in America, the organization is centralized. It delegates to lower organizational level, but it's always the concept of making the decision at the home country. You can read more about it in the book by Richard L. Duff, 2010 version. And once you have to know that most of these companies, they invest hugely in research and development. Because if you have a brand, if you have a company, how do you make it more innovative? You make it more innovative by investing more. Every company has a research section of research and development. Just for your information, most of these companies, they are tax exempted in R&D, and they can claim it as an expense on their tax bills. So the billions of dollars these big companies make, they spend huge amount of it on research and development, and it is considered as a tax. You can claim tax credit in this regard. IBM, to be honest, in the 1950s and 1990, it went global. But what I mean to say is that since 7% of the computing industry are investing in R&D, like if they make $100 per year or $100 million per year, they only invest 7% of that in R&D. Why? It gives them cutting edge technology, it gives them smaller chips, it gives them smaller computers, it gives them faster phones, faster computers. So they invest on how to make these products much more cheaper, much more faster, much more quality oriented. Another fine example of that is IBM 7%, computers 14%. Pharmacy and Ericsson, these are big companies. They do in multi. Ericsson is not only a phone company, they do other products also. And pharmacy companies, because they have to, and looking at this corona issue right now, I'm sure this percentage of research and development only for this year, usually they invest 24%, but I believe that we have a new disease that has came on board. Pharmacy companies would be investing huge amount of their monies, up to 80% or 90% on R&D. Mostly it's support from donors, from private companies, from contractors to find a cure. Biochemicals, like in terms of companies that tend to send things into space, medical software, video game teams, they spend approximately 45% into their R&D. And last but not least, called a transnational enterprises. They use all three kinds of categories. I mean, the whole lesson of this was the types of multinational enterprises. This is a quick question for all of the students. This is Steve Jobs with his multi-million board of directors, his company, his executive team, his vice presidents, these are all the names. Don't be confused by it. It's just giving you a circle and how information is delegated to all the other countries. So you have got Steve Jobs in the middle. You had at that time Timothy Cook, who is currently the owner now, and also his other VIPs to his on the first circle. I just want to know what kind of MNE is this? Is it a centralized or a decentralized? That's your first question for the day. I mean, other example of centralized and decentralized. If you look at a centralized organization on the left hand side, you've got the head office making all the decisions. Simple. All departments, all areas, all fields, the head office makes the decision for the centralized organization. Then you come to the middle part where you have got vertical decentralization. It means that the superior has got decision, the manager has got decision, and the employee has got decision. This is mostly, as I said earlier, into companies like McDonald's. They do that because each department have got their own authority to make it at the end of the day. Then you have got the horizontal decentralization, that you have got departments to department. Each department, 1, 2, 3, they all make up the decision to give it a customer friendly approach towards the decision making. Why firms become MNE again? I'm going into a bit more extensive work now from first slides. As you know, major companies derives most of its revenue from their sales from their home. Countries like Volkswagen, Germany, which produces Volkswagen, it sells more of it outside rather than inside. Ericsson, the big phone maker, it's a multinational company. More revenue is generated outside rather than own country. You've got Nestle. What a huge, I mean, once the owner of Nestle said, humankind is not entitled to free water. I give you this example for a reason, that most of their products in terms of dairy products, milk, creams, I mean, coffee, they have a huge conglomerate of different items. They do most of their sales outside. Last but not least, these examples, Japan. And Sony is a huge company in Japan, but I'm sure the sales are 75% more abroad rather than in Japan. If you look at African mobile industry, the risk is spread. I mean, I'm sure an African product may not do good in African country, but chances are it can do well in the neighboring countries, neighboring regions also. You have got an option of you're competing with larger companies and you receive larger economies of scale also. That means you have got a more portion to cover in terms of profit making, in terms of revenue generation. Big companies like L'Oreal, Pantene, Lay's. L'Oreal does cosmetic, Pantene is into shampoos, into cosmetic, and Lay's into the chips industry. So if you have it in one country, why not share it in more countries? People will get and will buy it eventually. Fine example, if you go into UK market, if you have a product in UK, you have a mobile product and you want to sell that in UK, the whole population is 60 million. I mean, not all of them are going to buy your product eventually, but if you want to sell it into larger volumes and quantity and quality, you might think of a country like India, which has got more than 1 billion population. Your point of sales is quite more there. UK market, for example, Shell mostly does the sales in UK and US, but when you go to India and when you go to bigger countries like China, that's where the money is, because fuel consumption in UK is only maybe for 25 million population, but if you go to India, you may have 200 million or 300 million people driving cars. So you can sell your product to those countries where it's more advantage to become a multinational company. The technology advantages are good because they take advantages of license fees. For example, most companies, when you want to start up a new company, telecom in most countries in UK, you have to pay like billions of dollars in licensing fees, legal fees, setup, infrastructure. But if you have the point of direct supply chain of command in many countries, you can provide your own tea, for example, into many countries. And that's the whole point. People all drink tea. You can supply it to various countries if you have the right channels and multinational. You know how much it costs and you know how much it will cost abroad. So I just give an example of that. It's a huge business community. To take advantage of units near consumer and avoid transportation costs, if you set up a product right next to the consumer, I'm sure you have saved a lot of money in avoiding the middleman and the transportation costs and various other fees while shipping it to that consumer. So that is a huge advantage of firms becoming MNE. Look at this, for example, the increased innovation in 1920s and 1930s. The labor costs for producing labor costs were quite high, but once the aircrafts went into larger volume, more countries, they brought their production cost down by 30%. Why? Because the more they tend to use it, and when exports also give you an advantage to be selling it to a larger market, obviously your labor cost and also your cost of production decreases quite a lot, because you tend to set up factories in more countries, your sale goes up. That's one way of firms becoming M&E. There's one saying in business community is that companies that goes multinational tend to grow faster and they tend to fail less. There are some challenges with M&E. As usual, we have studied that in our previous slides also, the laws and regulation, the cost. For example, it's very costly to set up companies in other countries, but you do get those challenges, the communication, the difficulties and cultural differences. We have a complete lecture on communication, on cultural differences in the coming weeks, hopefully. The payment method and currency rate period, because this is all challenges, why you're buying it at one currency, you're paying the man in another currency, you're buying from country A with one currency, selling it into country B, another currency, and shipping it to third country. So you have to be wary of all those challenges. And we did discuss most countries have got economic union, which means that all companies, before setting up any branch, any company, they all have got unions, and you have got to make them accept the fact that you are setting up a huge company and you have got no objections on setting up those companies. It's called economy. And mostly countries have got policies not to allow those companies that may harm their own products. So they tend to impose a larger fine, a larger tax fee, a larger tariff fees on them not to set up companies in their own country, because it will help build their own economy rather than companies coming from abroad and hitting them with their cheap product. If we go to these are some references that you can read. I mean, the books, different books. You can just pause it here and look at all the books that have been given on strategic management references. We can study in all these subjects. It will take me hours upon hours on strategic management, human resources process, cost management, HR management, strategic formulation, strategic planning. This is all taught in business environment, but we will go briefly on it because it requires a dedicated, comprehensive hourly time to teach you all one by one. What is strategic management? Basically, business strategy is the analysis, decision, and action taken by a firm in order to create sustainable competitive advantage. One thing I would like to talk about sustainability is you can measure sustainability only by profit. Competitive advantage means in the minds of the customer, our products or our services satisfy the needs better than the available alternatives. I mean, that's the whole point, that whatever is in the market, you have got to be able to deliver a better product and services. What are your core competencies? Core competencies are the source of competitive advantage that firms create distinctions in the mind of its consumer. Usually fine example is good brandy clothes like Versace, Prada. When you wear that, you know your product will last more, it's got a better quality, it's up to standards fashion. Look at a Chinese phone and a Japanese phone. When you buy something from Japan, I mean I was referring to electronic items, you know it will last more. That's your core competencies, and how that's done is through research and development, through quality assurance, and through other factors which I'll talk about later in my studies. Let's not forget always competitive advantage is always measured by superior profit, and that's the whole point of strategic management. Why firms become M&E? This is again subject to what these companies provide best. The best point of Amazon is there. I mean, they sell everything, but why it's so best in the minds of consumer that they want to apply always for Amazon.com? Easy returns. Whatever you don't like, they come the same day, next day they pick up the product and you can replace it easily. There's for example Casper. You buy your mattress, and if they give it to you for 2 days in your house so you can sleep on it, and if you don't like it you can give it back to them. Wells Fargo, I mean that's a huge, they give you training on all aspect of where your money goes. Yelp is a food product which if you order anything it comes to you quite fast. There are all the examples that I have given. McDonald's are there. There's one thing called Sling TV Mobile. You can choose all your programs, all your TVs into one phone. Similarly, with the whole point is you can change, if you go to any country like Red T-Mobile, you can change the network automatically. You don't have to buy different SIM cards, you don't have to buy different networks. If you go from one province to another province in countries like US, in UK, or for example, and you know calling that person is cheaper on it, you just automatically click it on your phone and it gets changed. So these are some advantages of these companies that have people. For example, Good Eggs is a huge company. They bring fresh from the farm home delivery. I know if something in Afghanistan is not example is acceptable, but people don't like to buy supermarket eggs for a couple of days. They want to buy straight from the farm, and this company sends it automatically to wherever the consumer are. It's a big business. I know it looks small, but it's a huge money making business. Caterpillar, mostly they only focus on their employees, have got limited amount of employees, but they give them the best product that they always keep coming back to them. Bright Farm is also a company. They provide areas, they provide water, they provide food, and they generate good products and crops. And the land, even farmers can enjoy part of ownership in that. So big companies, Cisco is a fine example. LinkedIn, Casper, Sephora. Sephora is also how do you, there's one question I would like: what is the hardest product that you see on TV, on advertisement? You don't feel it, you don't see it, but you still go and you buy it. I mean, what will that product be, for example? I mean, all these things, I give you an example, you can feel it. For example, Porsche, you know exactly what the car is, the speed, but there's one product in TV, you always see it with famous models with in the TV all the time. It's quite expensive also, but you never feel it, but you still go out there and you buy it. I mean, in Europe or in UK, that's the marketing value in multinational companies. If any students can tell me what that is, I highly appreciate it. Let's go into strategic management process. Always there are 4 steps into it. The strategic intent, which has got the vision, mission, and objective. I'm sure all of you know what the vision and mission of a company is, what the objective of the company is. Then you come into strategy formulation, the SWOT, the strength, the weakness, opportunities, threat, the business level strategies, the appraisals, who is doing good, who is doing bad, the product is which country the product is not doing well, the strategy implementation. For example, you look at the project, how long is it for, the procedure, how they will do the procedure work, the resource allocation. This is mostly to do with the HR and budget allocation, to which area you look to make the product much more effective. You look at the behavioral changes compared to last year. Oh, we tried this, it didn't work, let's go to next one. Always in any company you have got analysis of what we went wrong and the assessment for it. That's called the strategic evaluation. If we look at the strategic plan process, you gather facts. How do you gather facts? You gather facts from all stakeholders, the customers, the competitors, the environments. I mean, that's gather facts. In here it mostly means gather information. SWOT analysis again, I mean, you question your strategic issues, to be honest. You review your input, so what have you done, and you define 3 to 4 key statements. I mean, when you have gathered the data, you don't put everything in, you see what works best. You make a strategic matrix against which one is better, the threats versus the strengths versus weaknesses, opportunities. You do what works out best for you. I wish there was a table, I could have shown it to you physically. You define the strategies for short term and long terms, and again you review everything. The final review will be your plans, your stakeholders, your goals, and your strategies. This is a fine, whatever we discussed in the last 2 slides, this gives you a comprehensive view of the strategic management process. You look at your plans, you formulate a strategy, you basically understand the environment, what's going around you, you define your vision, simple, your plan. You come to the management part of it. How do you execute the strategy? What are your goals? How are your projects and your KPIs, key performance indicators? This includes how much audit you will do, how much sale you will do, how much sales you have done in the last couple of years, who owes you money, who hasn't paid you, what is your bad debts, what compliance action you will take. Then the management part, which is KPIs. Then you track. Track is a very good tool. It could be an application, it could be an app to how do you analyze the progress in terms of how do you best implement those KPIs. The reporting mechanism format, who reports to who, and the reporting mechanism is a must. You look at the strategy tracking tools and you apply different framework if the other ones are not working. What are the advantages of strategic management? Basically, it discharges the board of responsibility, or it gives you much more power when the board of responsibility is taking a decision, and the risk, the compliance, the legal, all those requirements are kept into action, and that's a good advantage. I mean, responsibility is shared. It forces an objective assessment, which means you look back at things, an eagle eye view of what we are doing right now. It's step back, I mean, focus. You look at it from a one step back point of view, how well you're doing in each areas of HR, in hospitality, in cleanliness, in maintenance, in speed. These are some areas that companies assess you with. You provide a framework for decision making. Your vision for future confirms the whole purpose and value of an organization. This means that the top people, they basically have got the right decision to make for decision making. It supports and understands the buy-in. What does it mean? That some employees would like to have a say. For some employees, simply knowing is not enough. They want to gain full support that requires them to understand what we are going to do in 6 months, in 1 year, in 2 years. In most countries, employees are trained, they are taught, they are given a clear vision and mission of the whole statement. So that's why the whole buy-in means employees buy into the product, employees buy into the services, employees buy into their own company, and that's how they can share it to their own community, they can share that to their customers, and that's how they can bring in more revenue. It enables measurement of progress. I mentioned what KPIs do. It's key performance indicators, and provides an organizational perspective. It looks at, as I said, from all 360 degrees. All components of the company are covered, which I mentioned in my previous slide. There are some disadvantages to strategic management. Basically, the best plans do not go according to plan. The English proverb is, the best plan of mice and men don't go according to plan, which means whatever you expect, usually it does not happen into reality. It does not work as you expected it. So it does not plan as anticipated. Oh, I wanted to make 100 million the first year, you make a loss. This is a rare thing in multinational. You go with your full planning, you go with your full KPIs, but rarely the future doesn't unfold as anticipated, as you plan it. It can be expensive. Most companies, when they go abroad, they tend to hire consultants, and let me assure you, hiring consultants are very expensive. They're a group of 4 to 6 people. They include marketing, they include legals, they tell you what to do best in a country, and they can be very expensive. For example, when Barclays Bank went in the financial crisis, the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi, he bought $7 billion worth of share. When consultants told him to that, after only 8 months, he sold back the shares at $13 billion. He made approximately $5 billion profit in just acquiring the sales of Barclays Bank. Why? Because good consultants told him what to buy and at what time to buy it. You sometimes trade off long-term benefit with immediate results. You want to make money in the long term. Most companies do after 1 year or 2 years. But at the same time, you want immediate results. Sometimes they conflict, they coincide, and they do not do a good coherence together. It impedes flexibility. Sometimes when you are going, you kind of lack innovation. You don't have the inability to change quickly and adapt quickly to marketing. That's because the flexibility, you have a vision that to do things by 1 year or 2 years, and you don't pay attention to the innovation part, and innovation is a must. Obviously, coming back to poor consultants, sometimes not all consultants do as the example I gave in the Barclays Bank. Most companies like CNA was a major clothing brand in UK. They did not change the environment, they did not make themselves technological or fashionable, or they did not do what Dolce & Gabbana, Versace and D&G was doing. They kind of went bankrupt. CNA was a big company. So clients don't, they have the responsibility. Clients means the owners of the company. But consultants can sometimes bankrupt you also. I will finish my lecture with this last slide. If you have any questions this matter, please do not hesitate to contact me on my WhatsApp number or on my email. I will share all these slides with you also in the group, so you can gain advantage of it. Thank you very much for your time, and see you soon, hopefully.